If you know a lot about World War II, you definitely know the story of the kamikaze pilots, a compelling account that reveals the lengths to which nations will go when facing defeat. During the war, Japan realized it could not compete with the military strength of the United States. In this desperate situation, Japanese military leaders decided to use kamikaze tactics as a last resort. These tactics were carried out by the Tokutai, or special attack units. The pilots were often young men in their late teens or early 20s who volunteered for these missions. Some felt pressure to participate. Their goal was to fly their planes directly into American warships to inflict maximum damage. Many of the aircraft used were older models, often stripped down to carry as many explosives as possible. Kamikaze attacks became a serious threat to Allied naval forces, particularly during the Battle of Okinawa in 1945. These suicide missions resulted in the sinking of many Allied ships and caused significant damage to others. In Japan, kamikaze pilots were viewed as heroes, embodying a code of honor that emphasized loyalty and sacrifice for the nation. This perception of heroism continues to resonate in Japan today, where the term kamikaze, meaning divine wind, has evolved to symbolize both national pride and the tragic consequences of war. The cultural significance of kamikaze extends beyond World War II, connecting to deeper historical roots that date back to the late 13th century, during the Mongol invasions of Japan. The Mongolian forces, led by Kublai Khan, aimed to conquer Japan but were thwarted by powerful typhoons that destroyed their fleets. These storms were interpreted by the Japanese as divine intervention, protecting the homeland from foreign invasion. The term kamikaze originated from these events, referring to the divine winds that had saved Japan from a formidable enemy. Not once, but twice. This has led to the common belief that massive Mongol fleets appeared off the southern coast of Japan, only to be destroyed by powerful storms. However, this narrative overlooks important details. The Mongols invaded Japan in 1274, and after being destroyed by a fateful storm, they vowed to return. For the Mongol Empire, known as one of the greatest conquerors of its time, being defeated by a natural disaster was unacceptable. They could not allow such humiliation in their history, and they were determined not to let that shame slide. In preparation for another possible Mongol invasion, the Japanese began constructing coastal defenses, including a large dike around Hakozaki Bay, the site of the first attack. Interestingly, they did not strengthen the defenses on the smaller islands of Iki and Tsushima, likely accepting that these islands would fall again in an invasion. The question was whether these defenses could hold off another invasion, and whether the Mongols would risk attacking the same location again. One of the key physical defenses was a long wall built along the shore of Hakata Bay, stretching nearly 20 kilometers from east to west. Positioned about 50 meters inland from the water, this wall was designed to delay the Mongol forces, giving the Japanese time to respond with counterattacks. The military leadership also made internal changes, punishing those who had shown cowardice during the first invasion and rewarding acts of bravery. In 1276, a new recruitment drive for samurai was launched, open to warriors regardless of their previous vassal status. In 1279, the Mongol forces captured Canton, the last holdout of China's southern provinces. With this victory, China was unified under Mongol rule for the first time in 300 years, fulfilling Kublai Khan's vision of a vast empire. Confident in his growing power, Kublai Khan once again demanded Japan's submission. However, this time, Japan took a different approach. Instead of returning his emissaries, the Japanese executed them, provoking Kublai's anger. In response, he ordered a second invasion of Japan. By 1280, Kublai convened a high-level meeting at one of his summer palaces to plan the strategy for this invasion, which would be much larger and better coordinated than the first, based on the lessons learned. The second Mongol invasion of Japan was one of the largest in history. Evidence from the wreckage of Mongol ships, including farming tools, suggests the Mongols planned a long-term occupation of Japan. Recently, wooden structures believed to be from a Mongol ship were found off Takashima Island in Nagasaki Prefecture. Researchers uncovered what they believed to be parts of a bulkhead and outer planking. Bulkheads, which divide a ship's interior, are characteristic of Mongol ships. A Chinese jar and dish from the late 13th to early 14th centuries were also found near the wreck. So far, 2 Mongol ships have been discovered in the area. One, found in 2011, measured around 27 meters, and another, found in 2015, was about 20 meters. The latest find was located 18 meters underwater, near the second ship. The invasion plan required the Mongol forces to unite in the spring, before the typhoon season in summer. The Khan issued the order to attack Japan during the first lunar month of 1281. As with many historical accounts, estimates of troop numbers vary, but it's believed that the Mongol force was about 3 times larger than the one in 1274. The Japanese defensive force was also likely much larger. Think of a large stadium like the Rose Bowl in California, which holds around 90,000 people. Now imagine 2 of those stadiums full of soldiers. That's about the size of the Mongol force. This invasion was different from the first, as it involved a 2-pronged attack. The eastern assault from Korea followed a strategy similar to the first invasion. This fleet consisted of around 900 ships, carrying about 40,000 troops from the Mongol Empire, Korea, and eastern China. They departed from Happo, modern-day Masan, on May 22, 1281 on the Korean peninsula. After crossing the Korea Strait, their first target was Tsushima Island, a strategic point between Korea and Japan. Upon arriving, the Mongols launched a powerful attack, defeating the local defenders and taking control of the island. They then moved southeast to Iki Island, where they encountered further resistance but ultimately managed to capture it. The Japanese forces stationed on Iki, led by Shoni Tsukitoki and Yuzo Tsukitoki, numbered in the low thousands. They confronted the Mongols on the western beaches of Iki, but were quickly routed. The Mongol forces were originally meant to wait for the southern fleet to arrive before launching their attacks. However, for reasons not clearly recorded, they proceeded to attack both Tsushima and Iki Islands immediately. The fighting resulted in the deaths of approximately 300 islanders, including those who had taken refuge in the mountains with women and children. Mongol patrols found these hiding individuals and killed them as well. This tactic was common during Mongol invasions, where they not only defeated enemy armies, but also instilled fear in civilian populations to discourage resistance. Such brutality aimed to prevent future uprisings and secure control over conquered territories. By eliminating potential threats, they could seize land and resources for their own needs, making it easier to support their troops. This complete disregard for human life reflected the Mongol mindset, prioritizing military success above all, sending a chilling message to anyone who might oppose their advance. The Southern Fleet, significantly larger with about 3,500 ships and 100,000 men, departed from Qingyuan, modern-day Ningbo, in southern China. They sailed 768 kilometers across the East China Sea toward Japan, intending to join forces with the Eastern Fleet near Iki Island for a major attack. However, the Southern Fleet faced delays, pushing the invasion to late June 1281. Their first stop was Ganura on Iki Island, enabled them to conduct ship repairs and rest before their final advance toward Japan's main island. The Eastern Fleet that aimed to land at Hakata Bay lost the element of surprise. When they reached the coast of Kyushu, they faced strong resistance from Japan's samurai warriors, who were now well prepared for the Mongol invasion. Japanese archers manned sections of a defensive wall and worked together under orders to cooperate as a unified force. Mongol ships trying to land were met with volleys of arrows from behind the wall, making it difficult for them to fight back. Although they didn't suffer major losses, the Mongols decided to delay their landing and instead took control of the nearby islands of Shiga and Noko. However, the Japanese quickly retaliated by attacking the Mongol ships anchored offshore. The Japanese forces attacked the Mongol fleet using both the sandbar on foot and smaller vessels. Their most effective tactic was sending a large number of these smaller boats to swarm the larger Mongol ships. This allowed the Japanese to board the Mongol vessels by using the smaller ships as makeshift bridges. Some samurai were even reported to have swum to the Mongol ships to engage in close combat. Successful raids resulted in the samurai taking the heads of Mongol soldiers as trophies for future rewards. These small ship attacks proved to be the most effective strategy against the Mongol invaders. In the 7th lunar month, July, the Southern Fleet finally arrived. You'd think this would change the tide quickly, but it wasn't that simple. Through July, plans were drawn up, and instead of heading straight for Hakata Bay, the Mongols shifted their sights to Takashima, about 50 kilometers west. On August 12th, the Mongol fleet approached Takashima, but the Japanese little ship fleets were already there, ready for a fight. Battle broke out immediately and continued through the night, a brutal back and forth. We've all heard about the storms that helped the Japanese during the first invasion, and while those stories might be a little exaggerated, there's solid proof of a storm coming to their aid this second time around. The fighting at sea raged for days, with neither side gaining much ground. The Mongols couldn't land, and the Japanese were holding them off in open water. But then, sometime later in August, right in the middle of typhoon season, a storm hit. It wasn't just a bit of rough weather, it was a full-blown typhoon. Ships near the shore started smashing into each other, breaking free of their anchors, with men getting washed overboard or crushed against the rocks. Those in deeper waters cut their anchors, hoping to survive the storm's fury. The sound of splitting wood must have been as deafening as the storm itself. It was nature that dealt the final blow that day. The question of whether typhoons destroyed the Mongol ships during their invasions of Japan, or if the Japanese troops successfully defended their land, is complex. While powerful typhoons are rare in Western Japan today, research indicates that they were more frequent in the 13th century. Recent studies, including sediment analysis conducted by researchers like Cooks, provide valuable insights into the frequency of powerful storms during the 13th century. By examining sediment layers in coastal lakes, scientists have identified distinct sand deposits that indicate storm surges. Their analysis shows a higher frequency of storm deposits during the 13th century, with two significant layers matching the timing of the legendary Kamikaze typhoons that struck during the Mongol invasions in 1274 and 1281. While we can't classify the Kamikaze storms using today's hurricane categories, modern research suggests these powerful tempests bore striking similarities to intense tropical cyclones. Some analyses indicate that their ferocity would likely place them in the Category 4 or 5 range on the current scale, due to the catastrophic destruction they caused during the Mongol invasions of Japan. To put this into perspective, consider Hurricane Milton, which struck Florida in October 2024. Initially classified as a Category 3 storm, Milton briefly reached Category 5 status, leaving behind widespread devastation. The ferocity of the Kamikaze winds during the Mongol invasions was even more extreme, contributing to the obliteration of a large portion of the Mongol fleet. A Korean source reports that out of the 27,000 Koreans sent on the eastern route, about 7,500 didn't return, which gives us a casualty rate of around 30%. Interestingly, Chinese and Mongol sources suggest a much higher casualty rate of 60 to 90%. Some believe this might have been exaggerated to save face. However, this is mostly speculation, as there isn't solid evidence to confirm those numbers. What we do know is that many of the ships that had cut their anchors tried to make it back to China and Korea, leaving behind any survivors who washed up on Japan's shores. These survivors were not met with mercy. Japanese forces, patrolling the coastline and waters in small boats, killed almost all who landed. Some reports say that Song Chinese, who the Japanese believed were forced into the invasion, were spared, but were still taken as slaves. The Mongol invasions of Japan came at a time when Japan was politically fragmented and in a period of military and cultural transformation. The Kamakura shogunate, led by the Hojo regents, held most of the real power, while the emperor remained a symbolic figurehead. Before the Mongol threat, Japan's military was decentralized, with power vested in local samurai lords. In facing an organized foreign invasion, Japan was forced to unite its scattered military resources, creating a sense of unity and nationalism that had previously been lacking. Samurai warriors from across Japan converged to defend the nation against a powerful foreign threat, creating an unprecedented sense of solidarity. Some historians and researchers question the traditional narrative that attributes the defeat of the Mongol invasions solely to divine intervention in the form of the kamikaze. These court reports describe the storms as a divine answer to the pleas of the imperial court, but noticeably omit the contributions of the local samurai and peasants in Kyushu, who fought to repel the invaders. In the heat of the battle, hundreds of these warriors, under the leadership of local daimyo, the feudal lords, sacrificed their lives defending their homeland. These local forces engaged in fierce combat, employing strategies and resilience that, according to many modern interpretations, were equally, if not more, crucial in turning back the Mongols. The absence of these efforts in official court records suggests a possible agenda by the imperial and aristocratic classes in Kyoto, who may have felt politically vulnerable. By framing the victory as a divine miracle rather than a military achievement led by regional forces, the ruling elite could maintain their perceived authority and spiritual influence. This portrayal minimized the contributions of the provincial warriors, effectively reinforcing the narrative that the court's divine prayers were the decisive factor in Japan's defense. Although it is clear that storms played a role, the impact was possibly less catastrophic than legend suggests. Instead, the coordinated defense efforts of the Kyushu samurai and the region's resilient communities likely played a much more direct role in securing Japan's safety. Regardless of this theory, the term kamikaze, or divine wind, became central to the Japanese memory of these invasions. During the Mongols' second campaign in 1281, two large storms hit the Mongol fleets off Japan's coast, wrecking thousands of their ships and killing many soldiers. The Japanese interpreted these typhoons as divine interventions sent by the Shinto gods to protect Japan from foreign domination. This event was a significant moment in Japan's history, reinforcing the belief that Japan was a sacred land under divine protection. In Japanese Shinto tradition, nature and the gods are deeply intertwined, and this belief in a protective divine wind symbolized Japan's unique relationship with nature. The kamikaze typhoons became a cultural and spiritual symbol, representing resilience and divine guardianship. Japanese leaders promoted the notion that Japan was a chosen nation, blessed with divine favor. This cultural myth of the kamikaze became a powerful narrative, especially in times of threat or crisis, helping unify the population and reinforce Japan's sense of identity as a land destined to be free from foreign conquest. During later periods of Japan's history, this narrative was invoked by leaders to promote national pride and resilience, solidifying the idea of Japan's exceptionalism. The victories over the Mongols had significant political and social consequences in Japan. The Kamakura shogunate, which had mobilized the samurai for Japan's defense, gained legitimacy and respect for its role in organizing the defense effort. However, the economic burden of the Mongol invasions took a toll on the shogunate's stability. Samurai expected to be rewarded with land for their efforts, but because no territory was gained during these defensive campaigns, the shogunate struggled to adequately compensate the warriors. Many samurai had incurred personal expenses in equipping themselves for battle, leaving them financially strained and frustrated with the government's inability to provide sufficient rewards. This dissatisfaction among the samurai weakened the Kamakura shogunate's hold on power. The Hojo clan, which controlled the shogunate, used the situation as an opportunity to place loyal supporters in key positions, ostensibly to strengthen Japan's defenses. However, this centralization of power led to a breakdown in loyalty and contributed to internal divisions. By 1333, the Kamakura shogunate was overthrown in a rebellion, leading to the rise of the Ashikaga shogunate and the beginning of a new period of Japanese feudal history. In the broader context, the Mongol invasions and the kamikaze legend helped shape Japan's political philosophy. The belief in divine protection contributed to the rise of Japan's isolationist policies, especially during the Edo period, 1603–1868, when Japan closed itself off from most foreign influence. Leaders justified these policies by invoking the idea that Japan was a sacred nation that needed to remain pure and insulated from foreign interference, a sentiment that was indirectly rooted in the memory of the Mongol invasions and the perceived divine intervention. For the Mongol Empire, the failed invasions of Japan represented a rare defeat. The Mongols had built an empire that spanned vast territories, from Eastern Europe to Asia, and they were known for their military prowess and ability to subjugate powerful adversaries. However, Japan's successful defense, thanks in part to the devastating typhoons, was a blow to the Mongols' reputation as invincible conquerors. The resources spent on the Japanese campaigns were considerable, and the failure to conquer Japan caused Kublai Khan to shift his focus back to mainland Asia, where he faced increasing challenges. The Mongol Empire faced resistance in other regions, including unsuccessful campaigns in Vietnam and Java. Additionally, Kublai Khan's regime had to contend with growing unrest among the Chinese population under Yuan dynasty rule. After 1281, The Mongol Empire concentrated on stabilizing its vast territories and securing internal order, rather than pursuing further expansion into Japan. Though the Mongols did not attempt a third invasion, Kublai Khan continued to send diplomatic missions to Japan in an attempt to bring it into the Chinese tributary system, an arrangement through which neighboring states acknowledged the superiority of the Chinese emperor and provided tribute in exchange for trade opportunities and political recognition. However, Japan resisted these overtures, maintaining its independence and rejecting foreign interference. The Mongol Empire's eventual decline also contributed to a long-lasting period of relative peace across Asia, often referred to as the Pax Mongolica. This period, which lasted until the rise of the Ming Dynasty in 1368, facilitated trade and cultural exchange along the Silk Road. While the Mongols failed to conquer Japan, they nonetheless left a lasting legacy in the form of improved trade routes and the spread of ideas across the continent. Ultimately, the Mongol invasions and the Kamikaze legacy shaped Japan's national identity and influenced its political and social evolution. The belief in divine protection became a cornerstone of Japanese ideology, fostering a sense of pride and resilience that endured through centuries of change. The memory of the Kamikaze and the Mongol invasions helped unite Japan during times of internal division and became a powerful cultural symbol of Japan's strength and independence, still remembered and honored in Japanese history and identity.
I am Khotan, cousin of Kublai, grandson of Genghis. Brother, you are a warrior.